Hello everyone, welcome to Tactica Imperialis and to today's video. Today is going to be episode 104 of Adeptus Podcastus. Still trying to wrap my mouth around saying 100 and something for an episode number, but I'll get there soon enough. Joining me as always is Remleiz from 40k Theories.
Hello everyone.
And our special guest this week is another individual who unfortunately could not make it to the episode 100 spectacular, though this one we did have at least a little bit more notice due to working commitments. But they are a very popular member of the community, involved in all sorts of things, including some role-playing stuff more recently. Ladies, gentlemen, xenos of all ages and everything in between, I give you ZoranTheBear.
Hi everybody, and it's good to have you, or good to have you back again. Wow, I can't even speak today. It's so early. Every single time you guys start this, it's like so early for me, because it's like, all right, Friday, I'm done all working, and they want me to do it on this time. Let's go. And then it's like, I have 4 hours of sleep to get to the podcast. So you've already jumbled me up at the beginning, but thank you for having me again. I greatly appreciate it. And I'm excited to talk more about the Warhammer.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to have you back, and apologies that just being on the wrong side of the world from each other means that we just have this
side of the world, and you're right.
I said from each other, I didn't say who was wrong. Just having these awkward time zone commitments.
Don't worry. But yeah, I'm super excited to be back, guys. Hope everything's been going well on your end of the spectrum.
Yeah, it's been grand, and it's great to have you back on the show as well. You were missed from episode 100, just as you were missed from episode 50. I still remember people thinking, wait, Zoran's going to be on 50, and Zoran, you were in the chat for 50, and we all started bullying you to get on 50, and you just weren't there because it was the wrong day.
But it's scheduling is weird, and I've been so horribly busy. It's been insane, and I know you guys are doing episode 100. I think it was one of the rare times where it's like, oh, cool, I might be off that day. But I've also been working nights in my current job for like 3 months straight. So I think I just died on that day. And so then I woke up and it was like already like, I think I went to bed at like 10 a.m. or something like that. Then I woke up at like maybe 4 p.m. because I was so tired. I was like, yep, missed all that. I feel like a jerk. And then just go back to work.
It's absolutely fine. It's all good. But you were missed. The comments were asking, where is Zoran? And so we sorted it, guys. We got him on, and we've got plenty to talk about, both in the news, and also obviously you've got the Warham's roleplay TTS RPG thing going on as well. Sadly, I've been a bit too busy to keep up with it, but I can only imagine the madness that has ensued.
Oh, it is. Instead of being super hardcore serious, we did the good old TTS style of being absolute jackals. So it's been interesting, and everyone's responses to it have been fairly positive. So we are grateful that it didn't just show up and go, "Hi everybody, you like this?" and then they just shoot us because they didn't like it at all. So it's been going great so far, and we appreciate everyone's support.
Yeah, I mean the TTS verse is kind of like as accepted as canonically accurate as the actual Warhammer 40,000 canon at this point. So I'm not surprised that it's gone down well, because literally almost everything Alpha and U-Lock touch seems to work, at least from an outsider's perspective, as someone who's not worked with TTS particularly. Everything that goes public is a smash hit, but I don't know what gets left on the cutting room floor between everything else. So
yeah, I mean, I know we definitely have the George Lucas Alpha a couple times on some things, because I don't know if you remember some of the background stuff of it's like, hey, that's actually a bad idea. You probably shouldn't do that, which is always a good thing when you're doing a big project or so, is to at least have someone to kind of give you a reality check somewhere, because sometimes creative minds go so far out in one direction to where you got to realize that when you're making big shows like this, like you're still making it for yourself, but you have to also understand that you're still making it for the people watching you. And so it kind of comes into a team effort to kind of set up what exactly they like and don't like, and instead of what you like and don't like, and try to find the parallel for that. But yeah, like there's definitely been good and bad ideas. We're all human. Like none of us are perfect, and I'm sure people will have a favorite and a worst episode. But we're just doing our best. All we're trying to do is make some funnies and make people laugh. And on the top of it being more canon than the actual Warhammer stuff, I know I've definitely, one of the things you'll notice, and you guys contribute to this as well, is that a lot of content creators, lately online, pretty much contribute to a lot of people's knowledge of Warhammer 40k in general, to where I know, at least for you two guys, I've had friends who kind of go, oh, do you know these guys are really good channels? And even people from my work actually put some of your videos on loop while they're working on, some tabletop RPG
I've
stuff.
been told I'm good at putting people to sleep. I'm the sort of person you put on when you're going to bed, is what I've been told.
It's like I think I've had similar emails, and it's
at least you've had someone approach you in the street and say like, "Oh my god, you're Tactica Imperialis," and want to take pictures.
I have. I've had that. I've actually had that once. I was walking down the street of Stockport High Street about December time, and some guy actually stopped me in the street. And I'd covered about 20 yards by this point, because people know I walk stupid quick. So I covered 20 yards, and I just hear this behind me, and I have to do a flipping, there's sort of an anime hot take, like, just looking over my shoulder, what was that? And then I realized it's almost talking to me, because they recognized me off of the YouTube, and I was like, what? This was surreal, because it wasn't even in a GW. It was in High Street. What?
You're famous.
It was weird.
If I can go off on two things. One, I also got like randomly noticed, not because I don't show my face at all, because I don't need to break mirrors, but at the same time, it's like
that voice.
Yeah, it's like I know where the money goes, and for a lot of like content creation stuff to kind of at least to compliment you guys have actually contributed a ton, and like you guys, Chapter Master Valric, Kirito, and a bunch of other awesome content creators have basically been able to really fill a lot of people's knowledge of Warhammer to the point where a lot of people I know don't really read the books, which might be just terrible to hear, especially for you guys, because you guys are basically the archival knowledge I like to kind of come up to and be like, the heck is this? Yeah, it's like
walking encyclopedia. I'm sorry, Remleiz, you just are.
I wish I had your guys' knowledge, because I unfortunately never have time to read the books and stuff, and I feel super bad when someone comes on one of my live streams or whatever and goes like, "Oh, what did you think about this book?" And I'm like, I haven't read like the books at all, but like I'll know the lore. Thankfully, due to your guys' videos and for me catching up on it, so I get a general idea, so I can at least follow along or at least join a conversation. So at least as much as TTS is kind of just a giant meme and we're aware of that. We're aware it's just nothing but jokes, and the times where we do kind of take a moment and explain to you what that bit of lore is in a more fun and lighthearted manner, that you guys really kind of help everybody else in the world kind of understand what Warhammer is. So at least thank you for that. So I don't know how much you could pat yourselves on the back, but at least try to help you pat them, because you guys did an excellent job on that so far.
Yeah, we make it work. But yeah, with TTS, the one episode that has stuck with me, I've said this many times on the show, is unfortunately one of the episodes, it was before you were on the show as Lehman Russ, was episode 19, the Warp episode. Like, there was a time I could quote that episode verbatim, the conversation about the Warp and the Chaos Gods, and it genuinely shaped my opinion of the Chaos Gods. Even me, who knows their lore relatively well and then made a 45-minute video about them, it shaped my understanding to the point that when I read the Sigmar version and the 8th edition version of the gods, and they dumbed them back down to one single thing, it was like, oh, never mind, then I prefer the TTS version. It happens.
And on the noticing part, there was because I work for a tabletop RPG company, and obviously with the time, like with us having to socially distance and all this other stuff for the pandemic and everything, we had to set up some stringent stuff. And one of the things that we usually get for just for working for the company is that we get all the products that we make for free. That we get or not like everything, but we get like a copy of it going, hey, thanks for helping make this. Here's your copy. And I started going to the warehouse, getting my stuff, and I was wearing a Warhammer shirt. And because I've been looking for merch store ideas and stuff, and I ordered a shirt as a test product, and it was the shirt I had on hand. So I was like, sure, I'll wear this. Apparently, we have several Warhammer fans in the warehouse. And one of our new employees there came up to me and go, oh, you like Warhammers? I'm like, yeah, I made it. And he's like, wait. And you just see this realization turn over. And he was a really sweet guy. And I don't know, and I'm pretty sure he watches this podcast or whatever. So hello, new employee. Unfortunately, I forgot his name because I'm a terrible human being. But But being noticed and stuff is always interesting, especially when I went to Gen Con and stuff last year, where I got to meet several people who also were fans of your guys. So it's always a nice feeling to kind of like, it's like, wow, I actually did something on the internet for once. And it makes you feel good and make you want to do more stuff. But yeah, sorry for dominating the first part of your podcast.
No, it's fine. It reminds me of a comment we got on episode 100. And something I actually said after episode 100 went off the air. That show was actually about 5 hours of actual conversation, and you only heard 2 hours and 15, including the death and redemption of Fresh the Sorcerer. And I know that's not his name, I got it wrong, sorry. Sorry, Fresh. But after that show went off the air, I remember reflecting on just how amazing it was to get 20 content creators in a room, metaphorical chat room, and it was utter chaos. It was the biggest clusterfuck known to any race that has ever existed in any universe. And it was the best thing ever. And we had a comment to say pretty much the same thing of just how awesome knowing all these creators and having them all in one room is. And I can imagine that when you hear about like other people, like, oh, you're into Warhammer. Have you seen any of the YouTubers? Oh yeah, X, Y, and Z. Oh, I've worked with them. I was like, no. It's just, yeah, I can imagine how just the realization of that must be really cool.
Like there's a lot of spiritual influence that kind of goes around once you start getting into like basically like what we do. You start to know somebody, and there's a thing going over here, and there's someone that you know over there. Because I've talked to like people all around the world, and a lot of people that people may even know, like Gassy Mexican and Dan's Gaming and all these other, and a whole bunch of other content creators, just like talking to some of them business wise and talking to some of them casually, and you start to just meet people over time as you do this, and as you start getting, higher and higher in the rankings kind of deal. So it's interesting, and the best mentality you usually have around it is just wish everyone luck, shake hands, and be like, hey, let's kick butt together, because we're all basically in the same pot for it. So just shake hands and be like, hey, we're all here just trying to pay our bills and trying to make some people smile. So let's all try to do that together.
Yeah. And speaking of things that make people smile, I'm sorry to hijack and go over to some news, but can we talk about last week's hobby preview, the Shadow Iron Broken Realms preview? Because this thing, it's the second link down in the chat.
Yeah, I got you.
For it. This had a lot of interesting things. First off, we got the reveal or confirmation of the release of Lionel Johnson, and, well, maybe not an exact release date on Lionel Johnson, but a release date on Horus Heresy Book 9, Crusade.
Which they got wrong, because they called it Saturday the 4th, when the Saturday is the 5th.
Yeah, so Forge World normally do their pre-orders on a Friday. I think someone just forgot to tell GW what day of the week it was coming out on.
So that being said, next year it is Saturday the 4th, so unless we have to wait a whole bloody year.
I mean, haven't we already been waiting like a year between Book 8 and 9?
Yes.
So, I mean,
but when has that stopped Forge World before?
I mean, there was a pandemic. Doesn't help.
True.
But yes, we also got a proper look at the Night Lord's Contekar Terminators, a.k.a. why aren't these the Atramentar, but they still look awesome.
Probably because he's a more heavy weapon specialist Terminators more so than anything else.
Yeah, and I think they actually, I said this in my video on the preview, they sort of toe the line between creepy and stupid that the Night Lord's Leviathan doesn't. Because the Night Lord's Leviathan just has a corpse strapped to its front and looks dumb, but the Contekar look suitably creepy without going into this looks dumb territory. In my opinion, anyway.
Well, apart from that one guy holding the meat hook.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, I mean, you're the Night Lord's player. You're the authority on all of this stuff.
Yeah, I'd like to hear your opinion, Remleiz, on basically when this was revealed. What were your impressions of it when it was just like, Papa, these now exist?
My impression was like, holy crap, these look awesome, to be honest. Because, yeah. I like how with every Legion in Horus Heresy, they're all getting their specialist model sculpts now. Because back in the day, everyone just had the same basic, these are your Mark II, your Mark III, your Mark IV, your Mark V, and your Tartarus and your Cataphracti. Deal with it. And all you had was some shoulder pad kits or head kits to make them, more in line with your Legion. But now we're actually getting specialist Legion warrior types, which, much welcome indeed.
Absolutely. You have to wonder, because I think the Night Lords are due for a major rules rework, or a potential rework in Book 9. So So I wonder if they'll introduce any more like named characters as well. Whether they'll sneak, I don't know, a Felzerost or maybe not Felzerost, but another character in there for them.
Wouldn't be Felzerost, no. Someone did link. I think it was Warhammer Community. They actually put the link to the contents page for Crusade a while ago, and it actually did have, and it did have like a dramatis personae of actual named characters, and I can't remember them off the top of my head, but there were a couple of Night Lord characters in there.
Yeah, me neither, unfortunately, but I do actually vaguely remember that. Though I think probably my favourite thing about the Contic art, the hook maybe is a bit derpy, but chain picks, like, they are the most evil weapons I've ever seen. Those chain picks are just, in a good way.
Can we just appreciate the fact that the Volkite cannons they have chain bayonets as well?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you call overkill, a Volkite cannon with a chain bayonet.
Yeah. It's absolutely classically overkill. It's very Night Lords, and I approve wholeheartedly. I just clicked the wrong thing. There we go. Moving on from there.
Also, I just want to point out, it's nice to have a Horus Heresy book cover that is a Thunderhawk flying over a tank. Like the last few books have been.
I mean, this is the first one, I believe, to have a Primarch on it, as I recall.
Yeah, because they're normally just tanks or Titans.
Yeah, I mean, this one does have a Titan. In fact, I remember this was a Titan that was revealed the last time Zoran was on the show.
Yeah, I think it was a psychic. No,
the Nemesis Warbringer.
Yeah. I kind of like the way these Titans are starting to look as well, because I've always been a huge fan of. One day I will own one just to have on my desk, like everyone else who has one who never gets to play with them. But I'm looking at the Horus Heresy cover. This is for context, we're talking about the hardcover one that they're showing on their preview page, which is book
Black Book with Lionel Johnson on it. Yes.
Did they just take the models and just make them look neat and then just Photoshop them on this cover?
That's usually what they do for most of the Black Books.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, as I said at the beginning of this podcast, I don't get to read all of them or get them. And I'm always jealous because I love having, one of these days I want to have like a full library of just hardcover books. And every single time I see a Games Workshop book, I'm just sitting there going, man, like I just want them so bad because they look so good on a shelf.
Yeah, I got, when I moved house, I actually got to stack some bookshelves for the first time. And I've just got a full row of AOS and 40k hardbacks. And it's just chef's
kiss.
Good.
It feels good.
It does. Moving from the ancient history to the modern era.
Just before we do,
sorry.
They did also announce some pre-orders on Forge World for softback versions of a couple of the Horus Heresy Black Books.
Yeah, as well as some relaunches of some old like weapon kits as well. I believe they're not new, but they're like reruns of old weapon kits at the same time. Am I right?
I believe so. Yes.
I don't know if they continued on with this. I don't know how old or recent this is. I think they were doing a voting deal on what Horus Heresy book would you like to see reprinted.
They've done that a couple of times with Reader's Choice, and that's why. So they reprinted Hell's Reach with that, I believe. I don't know if that's a separate thing to what Forge World are running, or am I missing something? I know that Games Workshop and Black Library have done that before a couple of times.
Games Workshop have been doing the print on demand for the Horus Heresy hardback novels, which are like 5 novels at a time, and that is due to have another set in September. So,
right. Okay, now I'm going to try a third time and move on to Necromunda.
Sorry.
No, it's completely fine. So we got our first look at the third Necromunda House book. So House of Blades just came out, and we're getting a look at House of Iron, House Orlok, with a very repetitive kit that is literally the same form, the same 2 models 3 times. It's a bit repetitive, but it's some nice models.
Can we just appreciate the fact that these new Orloks have jump packs?
Yeah, I don't think their official name is Jump Boosters.
It's a jump pack by another name, let's be bloody honest.
Yes, it is. But it is a very cool, unique aesthetic, though. I think and they've also got this like exosuit rock hammer thing as well. There's plenty of cool stuff in there. The one thing that I have said about these is I don't think they're as easy to use as, say, Escher and Goliath were if you're not a Necromunda player. Like, I can imagine a lot of people go and raid Necromunda to make conversion parts for like Astra Militarum or whatever. I don't see it working quite so easily with these guys.
I don't know. I think with the jump boosters, you could probably use them as a basis to make some Elysian drop troops.
Yeah, but you get 4 in a box, which is a really awkward number. So you need 3 boxes just for one squad. It's just a bit more awkward because you haven't got 5, you've got 4.
Yeah, that's true. Oh,
I mean,
I found
you know
the
how the bid market is.
Sorry to go back briefly to Horus Heresy, but I found the table of contents for Crusade.
Ah, good.
And for the Night Lords, it appears to have new rules for Sevatar, and characters called Nakrid Thol, the Flayer Master Mordrim Lashani, and Kairon Ophian of the Chiroptera.
Chiropteri. I've heard that name. Who are the Chiropteri?
The Chiroptera was basically like the Legion Council, like basically the highest ranking captains, I think.
Oh, right. Okay.
And with the Dark Angels, you have Corswain, Marduk, and Lionel Johnson.
And Holguin, he got this new, I think, because there was some new rules put out on like the last Road to Thrass, like Holguin.
I can't see anything for Holguin. I'm looking at everything for the Dark Angels. You got Dark Angels Spirit War Gear, the Hexagrammaton, Rights of War, Knights Cenobium, Deathwing Company Detachment, Firewing, Dreadwing Interrupters, Iron Wing, Corswain, Marduk, and Lionel Johnson.
I think maybe he's hidden away in Deathwing or something, but I know he has got rules because they put them out on the Road to Thrass article, so there's a couple of extra Dark Angels rules then that maybe aren't in the book. I don't know.
Maybe. But hey, Corswain's getting some rules at least.
As he deserves it. He's like one of the best warriors in the entire of the
Did we ever get rules for Nasir Amit?
I don't know Book 8 very well. I don't think we did, but I don't know Book 8 well enough to comment particularly.
I'm sorry, but he should have had bloody rules if he didn't get any. He should have had him. Come on, it's the Flesh Terror. He should have had fucking
absolutely.
rules.
He should have rules, but bear in mind, with the Blood Angel, it had Sanguinius, Ascalon, Raldoron already, so you've kind of already filled up a few slots of characters available. But
I guess, yeah.
But if you can remind us, comments, do let us know if we are missing something there.
We might get a Siege of Terror in fairness when we get round to that.
Maybe. From moving on from House Orlok, we got a meme with the Western 40k trailer where they had the Magnetic 7 and Billy the Nid. Yes, they really leaned into the cowboy meme and introduced a new Necron character, the Hex Mark Destroyer, aka what happens if a Death Mark gets the Destroyer curse and decides to go around with 6 pistols, 3 legs, and a whole lot of bad attitude.
I look at the model and try to describe her for people who aren't able to get to the preview page. Just think of a Necron with 3 spider legs and like a giant green orb attached to its back, and this looks like a giant Necron. It has multiple arms with like a pistol attached to each hand with cables running through it all. And I immediately look at this model and I'm like, I'm gonna hate foot charging this thing. Because majority of my arms are like orcs or space wolves or something, and I'm so happy that like Necrons and a ton of other, also, funny enough, I think you could see a fingerprint on one of his legs.
Oh.
If you look at the left side, I think you see a fingerprint on the paint of their preview model.
Oh god, yeah, that's really bad.
Yeah, it's like I don't even have my glasses on and I saw that. But I'm so glad Necrons and stuff are getting new models because I know it's been a kind of outcry, especially like when I visit the subreddit and a bunch of other forums and stuff. Everyone's like, why are Marines are the only ones getting models? Like,
though your I hate to charge this should be tempered by the fact that Overwatch is gone now. It's a stratagem only, so it won't be as bad. The problem is it's going to kill like half your unit before it gets a chance because it's got 6 guns.
Yeah, it's
basically General Grievous but with pistols.
Yeah, and it's this thing looks terrifying, and I can only hope it's limited to like 3 a squad.
It's elite. It's an elite character, so it's a one per unit.
I can imagine it being a bit of a glass cannon.
Yeah, I can definitely see me getting melee once I do get in melee with it. That it's not really going to be able to do all that much, but knowing how tricksy people can get with it, I'm pretty sure they'll find some method for it to fall back and still shoot. But we'll see how it develops.
And it can teleport in via a dimensional oubliette because death marks.
Ooh, yeah, that's gross.
Indeed. We then got a new Crusade mission pack. For those of you who are playing Crusade, you can go and play it in the Pariah Nexus now. That's cool. Granted, I don't play Crusade yet because Tau and Orcs don't have that yet because they've not got a 9th Ed Codex, so haven't really looked at it, no comment. The terrain from the starter box has been expanded into a new battle zone set of terrain, including the brand new auto-choral transmitter, which is a little shrine vox thing, which looks kind of cool, I guess. It looks all right. I mean, it fits right in with everything else. I'll just, hang on, let me push that. It looks fine, and it fits in with the other stuff from that battle zone. But then, probably the most interesting thing for me was for 40k was chapter-approved tactical deployment mission packs, where they want players to bring their own themed terrain and use it to create a balanced battlefield, and they want event organizers to run tournaments where the players bring their own terrain.
Huh.
Now, I know none of us in here are really particularly tournament players, but that just seems like a free ticket to this game is broken central, right?
Like,
Certainly seems like it.
I mean, the way you put it, if that's the way we're gonna think on it, I can only imagine that. Say, for example, if I'm running a tournament and the only terrain that we're allowed to use is Games Workshop stuff, or people just bring in their own terrain if it has to be only Games Workshop stuff. Like, if people are allowed to bring their super duper customized terrain and everything else, that could kind of get hairy, but I can understand it as a move to try to destroy that barrier of entry if they had to bring their own terrain. Unfortunately, at the same time, none of us are tournament players. I don't go in and do competitive and stuff. And I know that a lot of companies, especially for like even Games Workshop and D&D and even for us for Pathfinder and stuff, all the organized sort of like play stuff, if it's like tournaments or social gatherings, a lot of feedback comes from those groups. So you'll probably see a lot of decisions and stuff being made basically off of those gatherings, because that's probably where they get a lot of their feedback, because where best to get all your super tricksy methods and stuff directly from a tournament when people are doing their best to try to break your system. And terrain, I know, has definitely been a point of contention for a lot of people. So this might be some way of them trying to experiment with a little booklet kind of system going, all right, try this out and see if it works, instead of putting it in the full rule book.
Yeah, like I say, I mean, I've been playing this hobby for now 12 years on the day this episode comes out. I'll have just passed 12 years and half my life in this hobby. And I painted my first terrain piece 2 weeks ago. There's sort of a barrier. Terrain is the last thing you generally get into as a hobbyist, and that's not true for everyone, of course. But as a TO, you don't want to paint, in their words, 500 ruins to fill up a tournament table. But also, if you're a gamer and you're just a typical player, the last thing you're generally going to do, particularly if you're someone who flits between armies depending on what's the powerful flavor of the week, which some people do, and that's perfectly fair, is have to paint new terrain to boost your army for every different tournament as the meta keeps changing, because things get nerfed and buffed and all that stuff. It's an interesting idea. I just hope that TOs take it with a pinch of salt. And expensive, yes.
Terrain is very expensive. You do not get the value out of it that you do like a model. So, as I know, David, if I went to a tournament and they set me up with a map, like, all right, did you bring your terrain? I'm like, no, I'm not paying that much money. Like, I already paid enough money with this army. I'm not paying any more money for terrain. So hopefully they can figure it out.
And then you get the one guy who just comes round just bringing literally just a big rock.
Yeah, just...
It's my terrain.
It says good.
Did you bring your terrain for your army? I brought the box that my army came in. Will that do?
Yeah, it looks like a cargo container of my hopes and dreams. Please just don't destroy it. But I wanted to talk more on, if it's okay, I wanted to talk more about the little mission packs and stuff that they have. As I don't have a huge amount of context on them, I was able to peruse them through news in the past. Like, oh, that's neat. But for those people who don't know what these are, could you explain a little bit more on them?
So the way they explain, because the mission pack is also where the terrain stuff comes in, that they share the same slot. The missions are designed in such a way that I assume it's 18 missions in this little mini booklet that instead of having to troll through the rule book, you can use a different packet of missions instead. And I don't know how that's sort of designed. So it might be you go to a tournament and some tournaments will say, hey, we're using the tactical deployment pack. So the 18 missions that we could use, or the 6 rounds you'll play, will be drawn from these 18. Study this book. Whereas some will say, we're using the chapter-approved missions, and we're playing Maelstrom of War, so those are the missions you need to study. I don't know how exactly they're going to work, but they seem to be essentially an expansion pack for an alternate style of building a game. Whereas instead of having to build the board by randomness, and just saying, oh, what terrain ever you have to hand, throw it on the board, this will be your horde, this is more like, now you're going to build the battlefield, you and your opponent, and that will balance the terrain for your game because it's done through crafting rather than by RNG, I think. But I'm not a TO either, so I don't really know how this will factor, and we don't know when it's coming out or what it's going to look like on the inside yet.
Yeah, I mostly brought it up because they seem like a decent enough solution to go like, okay, here's a little tiny flimsy booklet that you can just print out quickly to support your tournament scene. And also sell a little bit of them on the side for the people who want to bring them to their hobby shops. And then after they don't like it, they go, oh, okay, this didn't work. New pack. Which seems like a nice way to do it instead of like putting all this stuff on a core rulebook and going, those dimensions didn't go well. Or putting that content into a new release. Because, I remember I was getting the new Wolfen book when 7th edition was kind of a thing. When, Thousand Suns destroyed Finners or whatever. And as I was going through it, I was kind of like this content here. Like I like the missions and stuff and I like to play through them, but I think I only got that book just for the missions, so I could play through them and kind of do that little narrative story, and that was it. So this seems like a pretty good solution to where I don't have to buy a full other content thing, that I can just get this. So I'm actually excited for these.
Yeah, and we'll see how they do it with it, because this, not in the past, I reckon this mission pack would have been rolled into an expansion. So like Cities of Death or Stronghold Assault or whatever the new expansions of 8th edition were called. I've forgotten half of them. But the expansion packs contained all the rules for those packs and the missions and a bunch of lore and some unique data sheets and all this, that, the other. It seems like they just said, okay, nobody cared about all that stuff. They just want some new missions to play. Here are the missions and how you play them. Done. They're taking all the extra spiel out. I don't know. But we'll see.
I'm super excited for
it. Moving forwards from there, we got, very little new. We got Warcry Catacombs, where we got 2 warbands we've seen before. The Cainite Assassins, I want them. And the Scions of the Flame, I don't, because I don't play humans. And a new Warhammer Quest-style board that basically makes me think, oh, look, it's a Doom level. Because it's got these big open gates and magma bridges and all this stuff. And it looks cool. I'm just not going to play it. But it does look cool.
I love their preview image that they put together for it. It literally, as you just said, makes it look like a Doom level. It looks phenomenal. And then it makes me cry every time I see the preview images. Going, it'd be so cool to play on that, but it'd be like tens of thousands of dollars to get the models and then paint it.
Well, this also comes in one expansion, so it'll probably be about, I don't know, it'll be in USD, or probably in UK money, it'll probably be in the region of 80 to 90 quid.
Yeah, which is usually how much these kind of run for. Because they're usually structured for also new players to come in, to pick up the box and be like, okay, cool, I have all that I need.
Yeah, absolutely. Though I will be picking up the Shadow Stalkers, the elves, when they do them separately, because, it's new shades, different looks to witch elves, assassins, and they're just really cool, so I want them, and I think they're going to end up in the Daughters of Cain soon, which will be great. Moving on from there, we've got a new season of Underworlds, it's called Diachasm, which is introducing Slangor for the first time in God knows how long. So we've got a Slaneshi warband with a Slangor versus some Lumineth, and we also got a cutesy little chameleon skink to confirm the coming of the Seraphon.
Can we just take a moment to appreciate the fact that he's using an actual frog as a quiver for his darts?
Oh god, he is. Oh my god, I hadn't noticed that before.
That's that cute. Is brutal.
That's adorable.
I'm just like, I mean, it is brutal. This frog is like, to explain, it's like a chameleon basically with a little blow dart thing, but there's a frog, just rope is just tied to his back and just darts are shoved in its mouth. And it's like,
Ew.
Poison frog is like, all right, you're going to poison this dart real quick. And then,
Absolutely. And then finally, Age of Sigmar is getting a new box game called Shadow and Pain, and it just happens to have Daughters of Cain in it, so I'm super, super excited. The Melisai Iron Scale is a lovely little character. And also, Marathi's becoming a god. Slanesh is breaking free. We've got an Elven Civil War coming up. And I've been building terrain to create an Ulgish board for Elf Civil War for about the last 3 months. And I cannot wait for it. Also, there's a brand new story out with Marathi and stuff. And just give it and put it into my veins right now. Get it into my veins. I spent 20 minutes talking about this.
I think the correct term of phrase is, shut up and take my money.
Literally, that was my tweet when this stuff came out. I was like, the new artwork, the new book, the new model, shut up and take my money. That was the tweet. I spent 20 minutes talking about it in my video last week. So let's just say I am super duper hyped for this. And I'm picking up that box set. I don't care, I already have 20 Meliusai. I'll take 30. I don't care that I don't particularly like Kinnerai. I'm still getting it.
Though I am curious as to why Slanesh is being shot by the Ghostbusters.
Correction. Slanesh is breaking out of its spectral shadow prison.
Have you seen Ghostbusters?
Yeah, I'm quite aware of what Ghostbusters is, thank you, Remleiz. I'm not that uncultured. I'm young, but I'm not that uncultured.
I was going to say. It's clearly the proton beams.
I know
it's still
there's
cool,
been,
though.
that actually seeing that artwork brings up a point. You guys would be the best answer on this. Has Slanesh ever been seen in any physical form in all of Warhammer previous to this, or is this section where this art piece is, you suspect it's like in the warp-ish area?
Well, we know exactly what it is. So sorry, Rem, go.
I would say that official art of all the Chaos Squads has been done back in the late 80s, early 90s.
The help out, I know they've been done. I'm saying, has a Chaos God been shown in the material plane kind of deal?
Well, this is a weird thing. So this isn't 40k. So abandon all concept of the warp for a second.
Yeah. So I'm trying to translate context of this to this.
So where this art is drawn is in a place called Ulgish. So there are 8 realms in the Age of Sigmar. Well, there's 9 technically, because you've got the realm of Chaos as well. But you've got these 8 realms that represent the 8 winds of magic from Warhammer Fantasy: Fire, Beast, Metal, Light, Life, Heavens, Shadow, Death. Now, the realm of Light and the realm of Shadow are where the elves mostly live, and they kind of orbit each other, which is why the mortal realms have a sun, because the realm of Light and the realm of Shadow go round each other, one in front of the other, creates sun-moon cycles, yada yada yada. Quite interesting. But at the point where the 2 realms meet, there is a sub-dimension called the Hidden Gloaming, also known as Ulgish, and that is where that is. That is kind of like a sub-dimension between 2 separate magical dimensions.
So a realm between realms, basically.
A realm between realms, and what happened was the elven gods basically sat there as live bait, because Slanesh had eaten all the elves in the end times, and sort of said to Slanesh, come get us. And it did, but because Slanesh was so fat, and Zeech kind of dobbed it in, they were able to ensnare it using light and shadow magic in equal balance and paradox chains, and so Slanesh was held within this sub-dimension, from which the elven gods took all the souls from the old world out and made them into new elves, which is why we have the Daughters of Cain, the Undead Deepkin, the Lumineth Realm Lords, and such. It's weird, and those chains have been breaking over a period of time. Archaon broke one, half of them are just illusions now, and I assume that Marathi going for godhood, that's the big demon snake lady, by the way, when she gets godhood, she's going to accidentally break Slanesh out, and that unleashes a new Chaos God, and we create the Broken Realms arc, which is where I think we're going. And that's AOS 3rd edition, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Sorry. Thank you for that context. I was sitting here going, because obviously...
I appreciate it.
I don't know. Go ahead.
To put it in a 40k context, imagine ensnaring Slanesh at the border between the warp and the webway. Sort of like, it's part warp, part webway, maybe like the city in Master of Mankind where the demons invaded, and that's in the Imperial Webway. Take that area, add a bit more warp, and then cut it off from both of those realms and trap Slanesh in it. That's what the Elven Gods did.
Gotcha. It's pretty brutal, and with that context, I like seeing that the piece of artwork is just a giant shadowy figure. Then you see one broken chain, and it's just like, oh no.
There are hundreds of them. I think it's like 666 chains because, of course, some of them can only be broken by servants of Khorne because Slaanesh hates Khorne, so Khorne would never help Slaanesh break out. But Archaon had a part Khorne mount, so he broke it. It's a bunch of they're all the only way you can break them is through a certain paradox, so it makes it impossible for one individual to just turn up and magically blast all the chains away, or Slaanesh would have done that by now. And it's a really interesting setup. But then again, you say it's brutal. Slaanesh ate the entire species in the previous universe. The entire species and all their gods. So I think it's fair payback to just hold it in a trapped subdimension for an entire eternity. In my personal opinion, but I'm biased.
If you cannot destroy it, you must contain it.
Pretty much, that's how you do it. That was the Emperor's plan all along. Contain the Chaos Gods, trap them in the warp, and prevent them from ever getting power again. It's the Emperor's plan. And we saw how well that ended.
We're trying, guys. It's just taking a while. Just took a little longer than expected.
Indeed.
This is why the Emperor should have entrusted his plan to some elves.
I mean, elves messing up is sort of an archetype of Warhammer, because Teclis caused the end times, kind of. Eldari, do I even need to explain? Drukhari, do I even need to explain? Teclis is a massive idiot in the Mortal Realms. Marathi is as evil as ever. And yeah, elves messing up is such a distinctive Warhammer trope at this point that it's kind of funny. So yeah, I'm not mad about it at all. I just think it's a cool story arc. But anyway, that's that preview. I'll stop ranting about elves now.
But next up, what do we got?
Probably we'll jump forward a few days to what happened just before we recorded this show. I believe this is from Gamescom's opening night. Well, it's called Opening Night Live, which I assume was at Gamescom. I think it's Gamescom anyway.
It is Gamescom, right? Yeah.
It is Gamescom. And there were 3 new Warhammer trailers, 2 for new games and 1 for a previously revealed one. That being Blood Bowl 3, Age of Sigmar Stormground, and Necromunda Underhive Wars.
I would like to hear as the outside is wanting me, that I want to hear your guys' opinions first before I go in because I'm more of the video game guy of Warhammer than I am on the book spectrum. So I'd like to hear your guys' opinions on the games, on like which one of these 3 were you like the most excited for when you heard about them. And we can start with Remleiz, because
I've talked a lot, so I'm just going to let Rem talk.
To be honest, I'm probably more excited for Underhive Wars, somewhat surprisingly, because I've wanted a Necromunda game for so bloody long. Though Blood Bowl 3 does look good, but at the same time, I wish they would do something more than just... Yeah, I wish they would do something more than just recreate the board game. Like, I would like it for a future Blood Bowl game to actually have an option, to give players the option of having to select between either tabletop mode, where you just play the standard board game like with Blood Bowl 2 or whatever, or actually have, like, you know, a quote-unquote sports mode, where you actually play the game as if you were playing an actual sports game or something like that, just to make it a bit more faster-paced, or a bit more arcadey, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I see the appeal of something like that.
Like if you ever played... this will show my bloody age here, but if anyone's played, like, Mutant League Football back in the day, you know, something like that would be bloody awesome, I have to say. And that's really show my age now, talking about Mutant League Football.
I do see the appeal of it. The only concern I have with, like, sports mode is what makes Blood Bowl is, yes, the ultra-violence, but it's also the fact that you can be betrayed by your dice at any random second. Whereas if you take it over to a real-time sports game, you basically take all the dice out of the game.
I mean, counterpoint, Space Marine.
Yes, Space Marine is a very good example of when you can take the dice out. I don't know.
Or even Dawn of War.
Yeah, true. I think it would be really cool, but I wouldn't want, say, Blood Bowl 4 to not have a dice rolling mode.
And that's why I suggested having, like, you know, 2 modes, you know, tabletop and sports mode, so you can actually alternate between playstyles.
Yeah, I can see it. I think they've done it to follow. There's a new edition of Blood Bowl that's just around the corner, so they've updated the rules to match that. And it looks like the models that they're using very much reflect the tabletop models now. So they've got the big Nurgle slug thing in there. And it feels like I'll be curious to see how the teams are designed. Because one thing I think would be cool is there is sort of a career mode, like a story mode, where each of the 12 starting teams, as it is here, it's the Naggaroth Nightmares, the Elven Union, the whatever, everyone else, the Middenheim Maulers, whatever. Each of them has a story campaign where you play, I don't know, a 3 to 5 game season, and you get to learn the mechanics of how the team works, what they're good at, and just play through them. And then when you go on to skirmish or multiplayer, or whatever they call like single player matches, I'm calling it skirmish for the sake of it, or multiplayer, you then get the option to craft your own team. So I hope there's like a career mode as well as a free-for-all, build your team your way kind of mode.
Yeah, I think Blood Bowl games in the past have generally had that, if I remember correctly. But I'm super excited for this, for Blood Bowl. One, like, I'm excited that it exists. I don't think I'm gonna be as excited to play it, because every single time I've played Blood Bowl, it's been an absolute just like anger rising experience. It makes you so mad. And if you have to temper your expectations when you come in and accept that things are not going to go your way, because Nuffle will not be on your side and you will just be mad all going through it. So I definitely think I should contact Cyanide Studios and be all like, or Netcom, whichever, because normally game companies go through a key system or so, and then you request a key off of them. So I'm definitely looking interested to stream it and watching people see me get blood rage mad at it, because it is probably going to like flare up my stuff. But Necromunda I'm excited for. Especially on the same line for Remleiz, is that because what more than I look at the gameplay stuff, it seems like a lighter XCOM with the Necromunda board game kind of on top of it, and XCOM is kind of really much up my alley, considering how much me and friends have basically modded it out to look all its 40k as possible. So anything as close to that as possible, I like. So I'm super excited to see what they can do with it. And I also find it interesting that they're taking kind of like a third person shooter kind of approach. It's not a third person shooter, but they're taking the camera perspective of a third person view. But it's still,
you
have action points, and so far you can go. Go ahead.
Do you know what it reminds me of, very briefly? It reminds me a little bit of Valkyria Chronicles.
Yeah, that'd probably be the better description for that one. That's an actually one to point out. It's, you basically move around, you only have so much distance to go, you have all these actions that call us action points, I believe it is. I have to look up more details on it, so don't take what we say as gospel. Definitely look at the trailers and what I think Frontier is also heading up this one as well, which they've been I think Frontier is basically turned into the relic of old days past of Warhammer 40k titles. And they have been really having a really solid relationship with Games Workshop in terms of making games. And the games that they've been coming out with have been pretty rock solid and excellent for the brand so far. So I don't really see them stopping making any Warhammer content anytime soon.
Yeah, it does look like some good stuff. There's two things I just want to point out from reading this stuff. The first is, I think, compared to, say,
Just focus on it, my bad.
Yeah, focus. There's a lot. It seems like they want to emphasize verticality, because if you look at some of the screenshots, it tells you what floor you're on, and it seems like you've got like floor 5, floor 4, floor 7, whatever. I feel like there's going to be a lot of verticality rather than being these wide open arenas, because it's an underhive. You don't really have much lateral space.
Yeah,
I feel like they're going to play with verticality a lot. And the other thing that is worth noting is that there's only going to be 3 gangs on launch, because this thing's coming out the 7th of September, so it's like about this time next week from the date of recording is when it's coming out, and there's only going to be 3 gangs on launch, and it looks like it might even be a 3-person, maybe it's got an option for 3 players, I don't know, but it's a low model count or like team count very early on. I know there's only like 6 to 8 gangs in Necromunda. Just thought it worth mentioning. There's not got all the gangs in it right away.
Yeah, it's definitely for game development time and stuff. It's definitely, they might either be reserving that for packs later on in the future, or it was just development time. And if they can support the game further on during its time, have the art team and game design team kind of crack open, the rest of the gangs to kind of put in there. So regardless, I'm super excited for it. I know I'll definitely be streaming it when it comes out. and hopefully it's good, because you know how it kind of, one of the things I definitely have to tell people is it does, if it has Warhammer on it, it doesn't mean it's automatically good. Like, especially for video games, as we've kind of been burned in the past, always expect, just temper your expectations, calm down a little bit, like just kind of get that Warhammer sweat off your face a little bit. Just kind of look at it with just a normal consumer eye, kind of wait for reviews to come out, wait for like stupid people like me to stream it first and get an impression of it. Follow your favorite content creator who will more than likely be covering this, and try to take anything people say with a grain of salt. Especially if someone like super is into Warhammer, will praise everything, whatever Warhammer is. Definitely look at it with a critical eye, because you definitely don't want to spend a whole bunch of money on a Warhammer game and then only play it for an hour and be like, oh, this is terrible. Well, hopefully what is not terrible is that Warhammer Age of Sigmar Stormground, in which Tactica, this is more up your alley, I feel, in terms of the world. So I don't know how excited
the world is
are.
definitely up my alley. So the game itself calls itself a turn-based strategy skirmish game, but then it also throws flyers and dragons at you. So I don't know how skirmishy it wants to be when you can have literal star dragons in it. I haven't really got an idea of how this game's going to play. I wanted to say it was going to be a bit like close combat XCOM-y, but because of turn-based strategy, I had this idea in my head of like a Dawn of War Dark Crusade style map, because it calls itself a non-linear campaign, and then XCOM style gameplay. So you can move around the map freely, especially using realm gates to jump between maybe 3 or 4 different realms, if that's something you want to incorporate. And then when you go into the combat mode, you've got action points, XCOM style systems, maybe, but I'm not particularly up on what a good turn-based strategy skirmish game looks like, because a skirmish game to me is not a strategy. I'm terrible at video games, okay? So gameplay-wise, I don't know, but flavor-wise, it looks really cool. The Stormcast look absolutely freaking gorgeous. Yes, they're Helms of Sigmar. Yes, it's too much gold. No, I don't care. They still look amazing. You've got all 4 chambers represented with Excelsis, Sacrosanct, Vanguard, Warrior, which is obviously lovely. And the main antagonist seems to be Nighthaunt, which makes sense because they're the antagonist from Soul Wars. So hopefully there's a good number of armies in the game, and you've got like upgrades, skills, equipment for heroes. I think it would be cool. I just don't know what it's going to play like because I'm bad at video games.
Yeah, I haven't really got much of an impression in their reveal or world premiere trailer. Didn't really give us any information.
No, it was just very much a flavor trailer.
Yeah, it's basically the announcement of the future announcements that should be coming and making you aware that it's here. So people like us can talk about it. And I can only say that from what screenshots I'm seeing here and engaging what it is, it doesn't look like something I'm going to be caring about. But at the same time, you know, because I am really sick and tired of every Warhammer game being a tactic game. I'm kind of sick of it. I want a first-person shooter, which Dark Tide's coming out. I think something next year or 2 years or so, which I'm super excited for because, like, finally, it's not a strategy game. I am.
At least with Chaos Bane gave us like more of like a Diablo style, you know, dungeon crawl type thing.
Like, and I'm glad those exist, you know, with Deathwing and Chaos Bane and everything else. And Deathwing was a fun little distraction for it. And Chaos Bane, even though we worked with the developers a little bit and to kind of go through it, it was like, it's not there, you know, it wasn't there yet. So,
do you know, like, I think the weirdest game that's come out sorry to interrupt, one of the weirdest 40k games to come out, from what I can remember, is that Legacy of Dawn game, you know, the one that's basically text-based.
Yeah.
That was a weird one.
Like, still on Steam too. Like, it's still keeping alive by a cult following. But regardless, I would like more games like Space Marine, to be honest with you. I would actually play an Age of Sigmar because I'm not into the lore and everything I look about it. I think all the models and stuff look neat. It looks awesome. I'm just not into it.
Can you imagine like a God of War style game starring Hamilcar Bear Eater or something like that?
That would be awesome. That, like, seriously, like, we need some more like into the battle kind of like games of this.
Like, why have we not had a 40k Doom game? Like, why have we not had a game like Doom? that's just a bullet hell super maggot chaos
going
smash
to like
fest.
the Carnate realm and just destroying, bloodthirsters and stuff. Like there's a lot of stuff.
Just have like it's set in the Cicatrix Maledictum era. The Maledictus has opened up, and this world has been overrun, and you're the last survivor of your chapter, and you've just got to take as many down as you can, and hope the Imperium will come and save you, and just play Doom-style bullet hell. We've never seen that.
How about like a fantasy or AOS style game, done like Dynasty Warriors? Just all these huge horde armies, where you're going just hacking through everything, like these big, huge pitch battles kind of thing.
Yeah, that would work.
Primarch Dynasty Warriors, Horus Heresy.
That'd be awesome.
You play his.
It would give you a chance to flesh out the Leyren, the Megarachnids, the Interrex. You can actually flesh out a bunch of stuff.
Istvan 5,
the
Siege of Terror, Cygnus Prime. Yeah, it could work. Like a Dynasty War style game with Sanguinius on Cygnus Prime, just carving through demons and stuff. That'd be awesome.
And having like a meter where you balance the Red Thirst and the Black Rage is kind of consuming half your army and all this stuff. Yeah. Okay, right. GW, if you're listening, take notes. We'll expect the royalties in the post.
So it's always a weird thing for this because I also get to sit on a lot of meetings of licensing deals and a whole bunch of other stuff and basically see how this works in like this weird industry. And it's always, so companies usually have different stances on it. And we kind of know there's been even videos and research stuff on how Games Workshop has handled their licensing stuff, in which we can go on and on about it. But there's several strategies that sometimes come with it or objectives that the company wants to push. And video games are a very strong way in which to build brand presence and also in brand awareness. Like the brand of games is very strong, and especially in the case of Age of Sigmar, it's like having a video game with the video game industry is very strong. Possibly, I think it's the biggest industry, like even bigger than movies right now, if I remember statistics right. So them moving in this direction is good, and normally when the negotiations like this usually come into play, it's either the game company usually is the one who makes a proposal because they want to use the IP of this company, which has a very strong brand presence, and believe that if we affiliate ourselves with this company, we can use their marketing support and our marketing support to really sell a lot of copies of this game we want to do. And normally they would craft their proposal to make it as in line with that company's like desire, either through talks they've had talks with people like conventions with the employees or the upper management saying we would really like this. And so the game companies try to craft it to increase the likelihood of getting the licensing deal that they want. So then they can, make the game, make a lot of money for their company and try to make a better relationship with a bigger IP like Games Workshop. So it's always interesting to see these types of games come through and why you probably see Focus so like hand deep in basically anything Warhammer, because it's just printing them money. And Cyanide Studios also has been like a very common developer for them as well. So it's interesting to see that Games Workshop has such faith in these companies, and obviously they keep making games. So Games Workshop is continuing to give them bits and pieces and trusting them more. Be like, yeah, you did really well. This made a lot of royalties for us, and from licensing royalties, which basically pay a lot of companies' salaries, they're just like, yep, just keep making games, and that just prints free stuff for us. And our effort in which to help you is just here's some lore back end, and here's some marketing support, which is how a lot of companies usually run for this. So it's sorry for going industry talk, but that's normally how I see it, and it's to temper expectations, but especially for us when we're like, hey, we want X, Y, and Z. Normally the best way to get that type of stuff, which I encourage everyone, watching this podcast and everything else, to be like, hey, if you really want something, not just you, but a lot of people down the line really has to yell at these companies. Not really yell, but like tell them on their social media channels. Be like, hey, you really need to tell them what you want. Because if they see a lot of that and they do a market research angle and they see that like, we're tired of tactical games, we want another Space Marine. Give us another Space Marine game. Let's go. I want another Space Marine game. Then as long as you keep saying it, they will make it. Because then Games Workshop, when they do their market research, and the game companies, when they do their proposal, they're going to go, a lot of research we did showed that people want this type of game. Here's all the evidence that's going to make you a lot of money. Here's our projections, etc. Then Games Workshop goes, we like money, make that. And then off we go. So that's a little industry kind of from a perspective of now finally being able to work it, which has always been super interesting, at least to me. So I always like talking through it. But there's always a perspective. If you want something, get your whole squad involved. Not just like you just making one random tweet or so will help, but get your group involved. Make a presence out of it.
Yeah, that seems like a very reasonable suggestion of if you want something, yell about it. And if that's
yell
not working,
really
get more people to
loud
yell
and
about
just no recourse for anyone's feelings.
Well, do pay attention to people's feelings. You've got to feel for some of the devs who must go through crunch hell. But yes, I do see your point.
I feel right along with them, and it sucks. it's brutal, man. Game industry is not cool as people like to think it is. So pray for the poor people's overnight workings. Pray for their souls.
And speaking of people who don't seem to know what sleep is, Remleiz.
Hello.
Sorry. I assume you've been reading something because you didn't get a chance to get through something last episode.
Yes, I've managed to finish reading off Manflayer, the last of the Fabius Bile trilogy.
And the last work of Josh Reynolds, as I recall.
Yes. What way to go out, I have to say. Did good work.
Do we need a spoilers, or are we far enough down?
I think it's been out long enough that we don't need a spoiler. Though we will need a spoiler for what you want to talk about later, though.
Yes, we'll get to that.
We'll get to that, though. So yeah, what did we get to? Briefly mention how they were on that one planet planning an ambush for the Drukhari while disguised as Imperial Space Marines. You know, wave to the corpse. Yeah, that's a good servant of the Corpse Emperor. Wave and smile.
Yes.
Yeah, because the homunculi basically got very pissed off that they trained up Fabius Bile and Fabius Bile just fucked off and stole shit from them, and now they want their revenge. Understandably so, let's be bloody honest. So it's like, oh, right, the Drukhari are going to launch a full-scale assault against me. I'm kind of fucked, because all I have is one millennial of Emperor's Children, a couple of apothecaries, and a few dozen war mutants.
And by one millennial, how many Marines is that?
A millennial is basically the equivalent to a chapter.
Okay.
But yeah, so he ends up visiting Navo Quinn from the Horus Heresy, who basically died, but he's still alive in the warp because reasons. Yeah, the warp did it. Even though he comes out of the warp and he's fine. But anyway, he basically meets up with them, part of an attempt to gather allies, and he ends up going to Fulgrim's pleasure garden to meet up with his dad. And
let's be fair, Fulgrim and Bile don't really get on anymore.
Yeah, it ended up basically, Fulgrim pretty much beating the shit out of Bile, and it got to the point where it's like, all right, fine, I'll help you, but I'll tell some of my other sons to help you because I'm a good dad. Even though I just beat the shit out of you, I'm a good dad. It's because basically, you know, all the gods want Fabius Bile because he's so goddamn interesting. Their words, apparently. Yep. So Bile starts basically organising a last stand, essentially. Like, he initiates what's called the Omega Protocol, where he's basically sending all of his new men away to this new dimension, or subspace pocket thing, safe location to keep them safe, so the Drukhari can't kill them. And he also gets the help of one random Titan Princeps who controls 4 Titans by himself, as you do. Yeah, basically he's piloting a Reaver, and he's basically mind linked to a pack of Warhounds as well. Because chaos. Because chaos. So yeah, setting up all his defences. I also sent one of his apothecaries away to the Black Legion, because he was a former Sons of Horus apothecary, saying, look, Abaddon owes me, you know, so... And Abaddon's not stupid enough to... What?
Abaddon owes Bile. Bile created Clone Horus. What the hell does Abaddon owe Bile for?
For basically having, you know, well... For being one of the few people able to create, you know, a vast number of, you know, Chaos Space Marines, for one, and having the only source of pure untainted gene seed in the entirety of the Eye of Terror.
Okay, point taken. Sorry, continue.
Spoilers, Abaddon's forces don't show up until after the fucking fight. To which because they don't, yeah. Anyway, that's another matter entirely. So the Drukhari basically launching their assault on Baal's stronghold, which is on Belial 4. Yeah, that planet gets brought up a lot, you have to admit. Belial 4 being one of the Crone worlds which had the Death Sword of Cain on it, and was also the site of the last Crone sword, apparently, before Slaanesh herself picked up and took it home. Even though this is before present day, so you'd think someone there would have noticed, hang on, there's this big magical sword here, or something.
I mean, to be fair, one of the Crone swords was disguised as a spear, so...
I know, but this was also before the Death Sword was taken as well. So you'd think the Death Sword would still be lying around somewhere, but hey. Yeah, Drukhari launched their assault, and one of the things they're using in their assault is the Tower of Flesh that Baal built the homunculi.
Of course, justice is poetic.
Yeah, which is basically bigger than any fucking Titan, to which the Titan Prince was very happy about. It's like, I haven't had this much fun in a long time hunting sport. And he gets killed immediately. As you do. The battle doesn't really go well until Baal basically turns to this word bearer's Diabolist. I need you to summon a shit ton of demons. Like, I won't be able to control that many. I never said anything about controlling them. Just let them loose.
So I'm assuming that's Baal's excuse to say, I'm a head out, and just leaves the demons to overrun the Drukhari.
Kind of, but not quite. He's basically trying to
how big the room was. I asked to summon all the demons.
Well, basically, the entire fight takes place in a ruined city, so it's citywide.
I didn't ask how big the city was. I said summon the demons.
Yes, and to do this, the Diabolist is basically sacrificing 6 of Fabius Baal's clones to do so, which summons a shit ton of slashy demons, as you do. And 6 being the sacred number. And as Baal is succeeding in getting all of his creations locked away, it's like, yes, there you go. And I'm about to die because my body is falling apart. This is my last clone body that I'm transferring my consciousness into, so I won't respawn on death this time. When I die, I die. Yeah, he has his final showdown with the main homunculus. His daughter gets involved. His demon daughter. Yes, his daughter is a demon. It's weird. It's a clone of him that's also a demon. It's complete. I know it doesn't make sense, but it's complicated. It's Fabius Ball. That's what you need to say. Yeah. Sorry. It's his daughter that's a demon. That's also one of his gland hounds at the same time, because reasons. And the Keeper of Secrets that showed up in the first Baal novel turns up. It's like, hello, Baal. You remember me? You shot me with a bullet full of blank venom. I'm here to kill you now, because I'm pissed off still. And his daughter beats the shit out of the demon. Demon's still pissed off. Then the word bearer turns up and is like, hey, guess what? What? My demon's now attacking you, and you're now mine stuck in a bottle. And, oh no, you're too powerful to control. I'm just going to throw this bottle away and leave her, because fuck it. It's again, as you do. But yeah, this version of Fabius Ball dies. He doesn't respawn into a new clone body. Well, he dies, quote unquote. You know, spoilers for right at the end. And right at the end, it's like a big time skip to present day. Because this battle is taking place in M37, if I recall, or M39, something like that. It's quite a while ago. But in present day, the Sons of Horus, now Black Legion Apothecary, turns up to one of Baal's strongholds. You know, a bit fucking late, you know, but hey. This big garden that's completely overgrown with wraithbone trees, completely overgrown. And Fabius Ball was there typing away, working on creating new mutants. It's like, oh, I'm doing this for the gods, because this is what the gods want. And the guy's like, this does not sound like you. This is not like you at all. It's like,
who are you and what have you done with Fabius Ball?
Pretty much, yeah. And then all these screens come up, and it's like, there's Fabius Ball. There's Fabius Ball. There's another Fabius Ball. And another, and another, and another. All active at once. So we have multiple Fabius Biles running around. So the one in the main room with the Sons of Horus Apothecary says, anyway, why the hell are you here? What do you want? It's like, Abaddon has a favour. He wants you to come up with something to deal with this. And what is this? Primaris Space Marines. And in the centre of the room, there's like a big casket thing. It opens up, rotates, sits up. The original Fabius Biles is in there, like half rotting, half dead, but still alive. All the little mutants around have started worshipping him as a god, like, Pater Mutatis, Pater Mutatis. And this version of Fabius Biles is like, right, let's see what we have here. So now we've got like a shit ton of Fabius Biles running around, one of them being the original and about half dozen clones, all running around at the same time. Now, bear in mind previously, even though there was a whole bunch of clones, they were not active until Fabius Biles' consciousness was transferred into one of them. It was literally just, a new suit for him to wear, essentially. But now we've got a shit ton of them running around all at once. And it's like...
Yeah. So I got curious. You mentioned of them going we have a problem. It's the Primaris dudes. Do you have a way to fix that? Did that ever get resolved? Did it ever come up with a solution? That's
the end of the novel. It's like, let's see what we can do.
Now I want to know.
This novel came out before Psychic Awakening 8, and I don't know if Psychic Awakening 8 did anything with that. Because then in Fabius Biles' new model, one of his acolytes is stabbing a Primaris Marine. So I'm assuming that Bile didn't know... Yeah, so Bile didn't know what a Primaris was until Abaddon's agent showed up and say, here's the thing, fix the thing. And Fabius Bile, who I'm now imagining looks like Mr. House from Fallout New Vegas, you can't stop me, sort of looks like, okay, I'll get on it, sends out a clone, and they go stab some Primaris Marines, and that's sort of where Psychic Awakening 8 picks up.
So when you said send the clones, I'm now reminded of that one song send in the clones, those happy, laughy clones. I know it's clowns, but still, fuck it.
One is an interesting cliffhanger, because now that got me curious of basically going, how in the heck, are they going to, how are they going to mess with them? Because I think that's been an overall question. I don't think it's ever been answered. It's since the introduction of the Primaris Marines and stuff, it's when is Chaos going to mess with them? And when they eventually do, how are they messing with them? And if anything does happen, because if it's
the closest we got so far was with the Brazen Drakes, and then even then the Custodians just shot them all.
Yeah, so in that story, the chapter itself had gone renegade and allied itself with Bile, whilst the Torchbearer fleet with their Primaris was en route. And so on the way there, they realised, they've gone traitor. Kill the Primaris, and they did. So we've never seen traitor Primaris yet. And Bile Primaris, I'm assuming, is probably in the next Chaos Codex, maybe? Touch wood?
Or at the very least, for a campaign or something.
Yeah, maybe it'll be a Crusade thing. Oh my god, what if that's one of the Chaos Space Marine Crusade upgrades? Cross the Rubicon Primaris, but Bile's version, so you
the
get
Rubilecon.
And you get Primaris stats, but you also suffer a massive degenerative mutation, so that after 2 campaign games, you will turn into a spawn or something. That could be fun.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting for them to balance that out, especially with Chaos Boons and everything else. Because just think of a normal Primaris Marine list outline and then just Chaos stuff on top of it.
Yeah. Yes,
it's interesting. I'm excited.
Yeah. Do they have so just to work that through again, so before the big battle with the Homunculi, Bile has 8 clones. 6 of them get killed to get the demons in.
He has a whole bunch of clones that are basically because it's on one of his cache worlds. So there's a whole bunch of clones in cold storage, basically.
Right, but you said he was not going to respawn this time, implying he clones?
No, he chose not to.
Oh. Why?
Basically, he got sick of everyone's shit. He just got sick and tired. It's I don't want to be immortal. My work is pretty much done. I made my new man. They're perfect. They're gonna be safe. Fuck it. I'm done with this shit. I'm done with it.
So more likely what he did is he saved himself to the cloud until he realised something interesting was going to happen, and then downloaded himself into a new clone when he felt like it, by the sounds of it.
Well, it wasn't. Well, his body was still technically alive, even though he was supposedly killed. part of him still lived long enough, I guess, or maybe because his demon daughter did something to keep him alive just long enough for him to be hooked to a life support system. But the whole demon daughter thing is just weird. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also Fabius Bile. Your weird must be quantified. Like, how weird are we on the scale where Fabius Bile exists? Because what's classified as weird and what's classified as Fabius Bile weird are not the same thing.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 14.7.
Okay, so about a 4 on the Fabius Bile scale. Because Fabius Bile scale starts at 10. Let's be fair here.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. But yeah, you've been reading, was it the first of the Dawn of Fire, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I pre-ordered and got my hands on
If only it was
Son.
Dawn of War. God, I feel sorry for you having read a fucking Goto novel. God.
Yes, I got my hands on the first Dawn of Fire novel, Avenging Son, which actually was in paperback. I didn't expect it to be a paperback, but I was given the paperback, not the hardback.
Yeah, because the hardback version was only for the limited edition.
Oh, that explains everything. I've never seen stuff come out in paperback for, like, the main run be paperback, because it's always
Well,
been
the Conquest series is always paperback.
Maybe just like every novel I've ever bought, when it's new, has always been in hardback. This was just the first time I've seen something in paperback. So yes,
we need spoiler warnings.
Spoiler section starts now because, to be honest, I do and don't need to slap a spoiler on this because the events that play out in the book is stuff we already know. It's the Battle of Macorta Sound, which is the first battle of the Indomitus Crusade, where Fleet Tertius gets the honour of leaving first, goes and runs into the Crusade of Slaughter of Khorne, and kills it. That is still the overarching plot of this book. Well, the back third of this book, anyway. But I should also quantify that they have decided to create a motif, because the opening line of this book is an "I was there" line.
Oh yeah, I remember looking in the front cover briefly. It's something along the lines of like, "I was there the day the Imperium died" or something.
So the way it opens officially is the sort of two versions of the same opening line, and I'll read it verbatim. The Dramatis Personae goes on for ages. So it says, "I was there at the Siege of Terra," Vitrian Messinius would say in his later years. "I was there," he would add to himself, his words never meant for his but his own, "I was there the day the Imperium died." And he's referring to the Battle of Lion's Gate, the Second Siege of Terra, is what he's referring to. And it starts off in Media Res with a flashback of him at that battle. And Messinius is sort of your main Space Marine character throughout this book. He is Guilliman's chief of security, if you like. He's a white consul, he was in the Terran Crusade, and he is Guilliman's chief of security. And he spends a lot of time around Guilliman, and Guy Haley makes good on his promise to never write from Guilliman's perspective. Guilliman is in this book a lot, an awful lot, but you never get a segment from Guilliman's perspective. It's always someone else looking at him, and seeing and sort of trying to read him and how he looks and how he feels and things like that. And it's a really interesting thing because you see him through the eyes of Messinius, you see him through the eyes of this Primaris lieutenant, though that is also tempered by the eye of Messinius. You've got human characters, including one of his historitors, which is sort of his new Remembrances. You see him through various different guises throughout the book, including admirals and all this stuff. But you never get a thing from Guilliman's perspective. And this is while Guilliman's still in the armour of fate all the time. This is before he can take it off, because it's set pretty much right after the Second Siege of Terra. So Chris Wraith's novels have happened. Certainly the first one has. The first Watch of the Throne novel has happened. But I don't know if the second one has, because I haven't read it to cross-check. Because I think Valerian, the custodian, actually gets name-dropped very briefly. As does Aenith Thiel, actually. Aenith Thiel gets name-dropped.
Woo!
So it's a conversation, and genuinely, there are two chapters in here that are absolute gold. One of them is Guilliman and Messinius having their last meeting before Messinius goes off to join Fleet Tertius. And he's sort of relieving him of duty, if you like. And he has this big, long conversation with him. And he sort of says, he wants to thank all of his captains and all of that. And there's a line in here, and I keep losing the line. Here we go. At all times, all theoreticals must be considered and practicals formulated to deal with emergent threats, no matter how far-fetched they may seem on initial hypothesization. This is in reference to Cole doing something stupid. A man called Aemid Thiel taught me that a long time ago. Sort of referencing the Battle of Calth, Aemid Thiel, and all of that. Which is a really fantastic conversation. And they run through sort of where Guilliman is, sort of like, 1, the High Lords absolutely hate me and see it as a power grab. 2, Cole is a massive complete random. And 3, we could have a second Horus Heresy on our hands because the Primaris are untrained and an unknown variable. And he sort of runs through it all and it's absolute just gold. But also what was interesting is Guilliman's kind of struggling to speak Gothic. Because 30k Gothic and 40k Gothic are not the same thing at all. And he's actually really struggling to speak it. He sort of goes on, I can hear in his voice just how much he's struggling to get his mouth around the new Gothic, because it's similar but different. It's like, imagine being from, like, say, Essex and trying to speak with a Yorkshire accent with Yorkshire dialect. You can probably do it, but it won't be fun. And you're going to probably struggle with it.
Yeah, I mean, that would be interesting is why would a Primarch care to, like, conform to that? You would think a Primarch would basically be all like, no, you have to understand how I talk, so
but
good
that's
luck.
The thing. Guilliman has to keep up appearances, and that's explored quite deeply through Basinius, is Guilliman is keeping up appearances. Because bear in mind how the Imperium sees Guilliman, and how Guilliman sees Guilliman are not the same thing. So the Imperium, he's a god. He's the son of the god. He is also a sort of god. He's a saint. He's resurrected from the dead. He's come to save the Imperium in its darkest hour. And there's a scene where it talks about Guilliman going up to Eternity Gate, where he's being mobbed by this adoring crowd who are absolutely devoted and love to see him there, and they're all throwing themselves at him, and the Space Marines are just like, back, you heathens, back! And Guilliman's eyes are just nothing but disappointment. Because he's like, this is what the Imperium has become. And he actually says this to, I think it's Massinius or the Primaris Lieutenant Nereos. Sort of like, I look at what the Imperium is and you give me hope that the Imperium and the Astartes are still who they used to be. Guilliman does not like the new Imperium. He doesn't like it at all.
I mean, we've known that for a while, in fairness.
Yeah, we've known it for a while, that he doesn't like it, but it really spells it out for you. Because I think that obviously this being the starter to a series, it has to educate the reader by assuming the reader knows nothing and has not read the 8th edition rulebook or the 9th edition rulebook. It's got to be like False Gods and Horus Rising. It has to explain everything because you can't assume prior learning for the first novel of a series. But probably the most interesting lore revelation in here is Abaddon's plan.
Oh?
What is his secret plan?
So there were 2 theoreticals. Guilliman speaks in theoreticals and practicals because he's Robert Guilliman and that's how the Ultramarines talk. So there were 2 theoreticals for Abaddon's plan, and he has this conversation with Areos where he spells it out. And Areos catches on really quickly despite being born about 3 days earlier because he's a Primaris. And he sort of says, so theoretical 1, it's a land grab. Use the Maledictum and strike out from the warp and conquer the galaxy. That's theoretical number 1. But theoretical number 2, and I'm going to try and find it. If I can find the quote. Essentially saying that doesn't make sense in terms of what Abaddon is actually doing. And his second theory was swallow the galaxy with the warp. So here we go. What is the other possibility? Asks Areos. Guilliman already knows this, but Areos catches on and says he wishes to plunge all the galaxy into the warp. And Guilliman is, I ask myself why. What would he gain from this? Reality in our galaxy would be destroyed, and perhaps it would be so weakened that it would spell the beginning of the end for the universe, not only our part of it. Could this truly be his aim? So I must question our theoretical. Why would any man wish to do this? I don't understand the lore of these so-called gods. The power they offer is fleeting, corrupting, yada yada yada. However, understanding is irrelevant because I do not understand it does not deny its existence. Therefore, my theoretical stands as the worst case scenario, so my practical must prepare for it. if either of the War Master's objectives, why open the Cicatrix Maledictum diagonally? Why not take the rift straight to Terra? Assuming the Emperor couldn't prevent that, if we assume he could, then why not cut Terra off, like the Age of Strife did? Indeed, why were the pylons where they were in the first place? And it explains why the Maledictum opened on a diagonal. And it's all to do with, and this pleased my science brain no end, space-time, mass-bending space-time. The galactic core and regions around the Eye of Terror and the Maelstrom were regions of high real space mass, concentrations of stars, particularly stars, that warp space-time, and it sort of hints at the idea that the warp is like a carpet underneath reality's carpet. And so when space-time's carpet is warped, you can look at simulations online for this, heavy objects warp space-time, and where you have particularly heavy objects, that might allow the warp to breach into reality more easily. It sort of goes with the Tau Corvatra theory of like diving down and skimming the warp, that the warp is a dimension beneath real space, and heavier areas of space are easier to breach, which is why the Maledictum runs from where the Eye of Terror was, high concentration of worlds where the Eldari used to live, through the galactic core, the heaviest bit of the entire galaxy, because it's a ginormous black hole, and so on and so forth. And it's a really interesting idea, and the pylons, which Abaddon's been destroying for the past 10,000 years, were placed pretty much on that diagonal to stop exactly this happening. So all of Abaddon's crusades, you track them, have been breaking pylons, so that when the Maledictum opened, bang, there we go. And he sort of gives an idea that the Astronomicon is a lighthouse. These mass concentrations are islands in the sea of the warp. The shores of these benighted ocean, the cliffs, the bluffs, and so on and so forth. Then it goes on to the Macorta Sound, and so on. It's just really interesting how it spells out what the warp's doing, and why Abaddon's doing what he's doing.
Yeah, wouldn't the if I can have a theory, if that's okay, wouldn't basically if the warp basically encompasses everything, then wouldn't that result in the death of basically, for obviously everything, and then wouldn't the Chaos Gods just go boop?
That's one theory, and it's a theory that many people have, that if the Chaos Gods consume all reality and every living thing dies, the Chaos Gods have no fuel and thus they die too. But does Abaddon actually care?
Yeah,
Abaddon courts the Chaos Gods, but he doesn't serve them.
Yeah, so wouldn't it be an interesting character thing to where Abaddon, he's about to pull the trigger and consume all the warp, and it's all like, don't worry, I stayed with the cause. I'm going to kill all the Chaos Gods. And then he does it finally with his foot.
And it goes on to sort of back that theory of swallow the galaxy up via the Crusade of Slaughter, which is being trailed by what I can only describe as a Blackstone Comet type thing, which is also like corrupted pylons. And wherever this ship goes, it sort of pulls a warp storm along behind it, sort of expanding a warp storm by disrupting the materium as it goes. I'm just trying to quickly skim read this bit. So they're getting large amounts of Blackstone together. Lil Gilliman believes the ultimate strategy is spread the warp across the materium, and it sort of goes on the idea of they're spreading the warp across Macorta Sound so that the warp storm at the heart of the Macorta Sound will spread, join the Maledictum, and will considerably allow for more stuff to be swallowed up by the warp. So that's sort of saying, that's Abaddon's plan, and here's why it works, and now we've got to go and stop it. And they do, because Macorta Sound is an Imperial victory.
Until next time, as it always goes.
Yeah, we'll see what next time is. I'm assuming Nick Kime will write it, because he's sort of the secondary chief editor on Dawn of Fire after Guy Haley himself, who wrote this. And I will say, as much as the book in paperback form at the very least is, 400? Nope, more like 500 pages, plus an epilogue. It's 506 pages, or 7 pages long. It's very freaking long. I finished it in 2 days. It reads so well, it flows really well, and it's actually juggling 6 story arcs at once. Oh. So you've got the story arc of Messinius. You've got like several POVs you jump between. Messinius, a Commodore in Fleet in Battle Group St. Aster that goes on to join Fleet Tertius. You've got a random guard lieutenant who gets dragged along by an inquisitor. You've got a random imperial scribe who's a little bit sneaky by keeping a private journal and fancies himself a historian, who goes on to become Guilliman's historitor. And actually, this is the other fun thing I'll tell you in a minute. And this other random scribe who has her tarot cards fall in such a way and is on a quest to deliver the message. But unfortunately, the guy she's delivering the message to is the guy who's just gone off to be Guilliman's historitor. So it doesn't work. But what's really fun is in the last chapter, Fabien Guelfrain, which is the historitor, is tasked with writing, and I quote, "the concise history of the Great Heresy War."
Oh.
Guilliman charged some bloke from the Administratum with writing the history of the Horus Heresy. And he does it before as Fleet Primus is leaving. And he says that there was popular romances published in the late 32nd millennium that proved to be surprisingly accurate. And they were used for flavour to make them quite accessible. And he actually sort of says that the way I sort of did it was basically the primary source was the notes of Kirill Sinderman. So Guelfrain got access, I'm assuming through, Guilliman's influence, to Kirill Sinderman's personal notes. And sort of Sinderman, I knew Sinderman. He was interesting. He was a good bloke. And his work bears the highest seals of the Inquisition with good reason, says Guilliman.
He was an inquisitor.
Yeah, and this is the funny thing. The first page of the first version of the concise history of the Great Heresy War begins, "I was there the day the Emperor slew Horus." So "I was there" has become not only Black Library's motif, but also the in-universe motif as well. And Guilliman actually then goes on and talks about this after telling Fabian he's getting combat training because, he wants his Remembrasses on the front line again. Where is it? Where does he say it? Here we go. "I tell you, though I am a relic of another age and my brothers are all gone, though I am opposed and the sky itself is wounded, I will fight to the last breath. I will push the enemy out of Imperium Sanctus. I will do the same to whatever lies beyond the rift," because we don't know what's on the wrong side of Imperium Nihilus right now, "and bring order to the galaxy again. I will do all in my power to see that the Emperor's dream is not forgotten and the nightmare that has taken its place is ended. One day, Fabian, perhaps you will write similar words to those of Sinderman. You too may pen, 'I was there,' in pride. The Indomitus Crusade has begun." End. That's how the book ends.
Yeah.
That's pretty much exactly how the book ends.
I wish you had time to read all these because I know a lot of them are really good reads.
Guy Haley, I've not read a bad Guy Haley book. I know he's not the most consistent on everything, but between his Dante books, Baneblade and Shadow Sword, now Avenging Son, I have not read a bad Guy Haley book. And he writes Guilliman so well. And he jumps around perspectives so you never feel too cramped on one thing, but he jumps around just little enough that you can still follow all the plot threads and you're not completely lost every time you get back to that character. It's really good. And it actually gives some interesting insight into the Primaris Marines too, because Areos is fighting on autopilot. He's not in control of his limbs, pretty much. Sort of he's blocked the blow before he's even consciously realised he's done it. He's kind of fighting on autopilot, and it sort of goes through all that stuff, and it's quite hellish, really. You also get a brief conversation with Alpha Primus, who's like, "Why are you talking to me? To warn you about Call. Also because I'm bored and lonely, but mostly to warn you about Call." And implying that Alpha Primus has got multiple Primarchs gene seed mixed up in him, because he's got several of the abilities granted by the Emperor to the various Primarchs. So, yeah, that was interesting as well. Anything else, or should I close the spoilers?
Close the spoilers, I guess.
Ram, any questions? Or do you want to wait?
No, that's fine.
Okay, in which case, close spoilers. Welcome back, those who skipped ahead. I completely don't blame you. It is rather new, and I read it rather quickly. So, yeah, that was Avenging Son. Good book. Go read it.
Fair enough.
So, where are we? Oh, blimey, we've been going for an hour and 40 minutes already, nearly. Shall we do some questions?
Yeah, sure. What are some of your favourite civilian interactions / facts in either 40k or AOS?
Well, I mean, load-bearing walls being heretical. That has to be up there.
Is that really a civilian thing?
It's not a military thing. So I guess.
Well, it can be with military installation.
Yeah, I suppose. I take your point. No, that would all be spoilers. For Sigmar, some of the cool stuff is sort of the interactions between the Reclaimed and the Azerites. This is something that comes up particularly in Lady of Sorrow. So there's sort of two distinct types of humans in AOS. There's those who lived and ran off to the Realm of Heavens when Sigmar shut the gates, and those who survived the Age of Chaos by living in the realms themselves and survived the hell. And the distinction between them and the attitudes one has to the other are quite interesting, and it varies by realm and by city and all that, but it's a fun interaction, so I'd go with that.
Funny, one of my favourite interactions was from that Lucius the Eternal short story, the one with the factory worker, just because, day in the life of a factory worker, it was pretty much in 40k, and that's quite an interesting little thing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Here's your 18-hour work day, now go home to your shitty little hovel and sleep for 4 hours before you get back to work. Kind of thing.
Lovely. I didn't even get a chance to talk about... I've forgotten about Armageddon Saint. Never mind. Next time.
Next episode.
If I get a chance, we'll talk about next episode later.
Yes. Do you think that Farsight's journey will ultimately damn him, because in both Farsight books the demons are actively competing for control over him, or to use him as a pawn?
Yeah, so Khorne and Tzeentch both have their eye on Farsight, and that's confirmed early on in Empire of Light. I think it's in the prologue to Empire of Light, so I don't consider that much of a spoiler. And I know Rem's reading it, so he'll already know that.
Yeah.
But will it end in his damnation? I think it certainly could, and I think it was supposed to. I think after Arthas Moloch, he was supposed to lead the Tau heresy of Farsight versus the Ethereals and try and bring the whole thing crashing down. I think that was the idea at Arthas Moloch, and Farsight sort of went off script by saying, no, I'm leaving, I'm having none of this, and left. I can't prove that, and I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to play that arc out at some point, but especially with the Indomitus Crusade and everything's going on with the Imperium right now, I don't think it's something they're going to push soon.
Fair enough. Since the Rubicon seems to be able to save even the most far gone casualties, what are the odds that GW will give Bjorn the Primaris treatment in the future? I think that's very unlikely, personally.
If they want the fan base to hate them, sure.
Yeah, that's really touching a fan beloved character, and then because definitely, if I was in the offices and go like, should we make Bjorn like a Primaris character, get them all converted and stuff? I'd vehemently say no. He's kind of ingrained, especially for rules. He's so ingrained in the books and stuff for rules of being that dreadnought as a hero. So turning him into a Primaris Marine in some way, shape, or form, or even upgrading his current dreadnought would probably
even from an in-law standpoint, the Space Wolves would never upgrade Bjorn to a Redemptor Dreadnought, considering Redemptor Dreadnought kills its pilots.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you don't want that.
Because the Mechanicus didn't realise these are meant to be like a sarcophagus. Now would you use a Space Marine as a battery? Because the fucking Mechanicus.
Yeah, and I think definitely taking him out of the Dreadnought would just be a horrible idea. Oh no. Also, can I just point out Blood for the Blood God is trending right now?
Nice.
Yeah, just no idea why.
Before I say nice, we need to get context of that.
It's not actually a Warhammer thing. It's apparently to do with Minecraft. For God's sake.
Okay, let's just in case it's something bad, I wouldn't mention it.
Yeah,
Or some people just saying like, no, it's just because of 2020.
I really like that, like Warhammer terms like Daka and like Blood for the Blood God and stuff like that. Is like, because it's been so universally used and it's influenced so many people, it's become like a common thing. So I've met people who use Daka, but they have no ideas from 40k. That's how far.
Yeah, I've genuinely heard. I was talking to some people in my Discord who have like their military history stuff or know people in the military, and Daka is actually being adopted in some areas in the military. Like, the word Daka is actually in circulation, and I know Psyker has been borrowed by certain like fandoms and things because what do you call someone who has psychic powers? Psyker, easy, and all that stuff. And I know I was talking to someone last night actually, and they were talking to their historical tabletop friends who collect like the historical miniatures. And there's that crossover between those people and the Warhammer people, and some do both, and sort of explains to these people like the mythos of red ones go faster and all of that. It's just quite entertaining.
But next question.
Right. In 40k, has there been any literal deus ex machinas from the Emperor outside of his Imperial demons, Thor, and his barbecue cheerleading squad? I have no idea what those last two references are.
No, I don't either. Barbecue cheerleading squad? What?
Thor?
I don't. This is the custodies. Maybe I don't.
I'm just now waiting for people to draw TTS fan art of the Pilastodies having a barbecue
in cheerleader outfits.
God Emperor standing there with an apron on with a mug that says like "worst dad," just sipping over a barbecue pit.
Yeah,
I want that fan art. People need to add us on Twitter with that fan art. I want it.
As for a literal Deus Ex Machina by the Emperor, I do not
Plague
recall
War.
one. Though
the end of Plague War, it's like, hey, the Emperor just possesses a little girl just goes bang and kills most of the demon horde in one shot.
Right. Yeah, okay, I'll give you that one. And one of the other books that I have been reading this week that I didn't get a chance to talk about was Armageddon Saint, the Last Chances novel, where it's old enough I can say this. Someone survives who has no right to survive, and is no longer so Cage kills himself at the end of the previous Last Chances novel by throwing himself and Von Straub into a pit of lava, whilst also being possessed. In this book, he's not possessed and he's alive, and he sort of assumes it was an imperial miracle, and someone even has the temerity to call a penal legionnaire who has twice been drafted into the Last Chances and a living saint for it. But Schaefer is having none of that nonsense. So yeah, that's the nearest I've seen.
Fair enough. Would you like to see a Moor Tribe novel?
Yep.
And what would you imagine that would be?
Well, there's actually a good destruction novel already. It's called Gloomspite, where actually the Gloomspite are the antagonists, and you don't actually get any time with them as the POV, but it sort of sets up the coming of the Bad Moon and the Gloomspite Gits really well, and it is really kind of horrific when they show up. So sort of having the idea of an army wandering through battlefields, picking off, seeing these stripped bare carcasses with nothing but bones, and even the bones are broken down and stripped of everything they've got, and suddenly it's getting cold, and all of a sudden the ogles are on top of them, and that sort of thing. I think that could be an interesting way to go.
Fair enough. Do you think they will ever add a new Ogre Moor Tribe character to the tabletop?
They should. They didn't, but they should have done. Like, because Gorfag, the Man-Eater bloke and the super fat King bloke got taken out of the game, and there's no named characters in the Ogre book anymore. That needs fixing.
Okay, given that some Blood Angels have probably fallen to Chaos by now, what happens with the Black Rage? Does going Khorne worship help or not?
I'd guess it doesn't help. It's just what you're seeing means that suddenly you are probably still sanguineous, but everyone who looks like Horus is now actually a loyalist.
Either that, or it just happens like what happens with the blood drinkers. Because when some blood drinkers fall to a black rage, instead of believing they're sanguineous, they end up having that vision of the meeting between their founder and the quote-unquote angel that was actually Kairos Fateweaver in disguise.
Yeah, and all of them have said no, because if a single one says yes, the whole chapter is damned, right?
Yeah. So it'd probably be something like that, okay, you fall into Khorne, you fall into Black Rage, okay, you just think you're Khorne or something wanted to kill people, you just go scream blood for the blood god kind of thing, I don't know.
Or maybe you experience Cygnus Prime, because that's obviously Khorne versus the Blood Angels, and the Blood Angels were already gone, kind of, at Cygnus Prime, so maybe you're stuck in an endless nightmare of mass murder on Cygnus Prime, I don't know.
I would kind of imagine as it getting corrupted and being enhanced more on an emotional level, to where if you Black Rage, you still see the event and stuff, but instead of looking at Horus evil Horus, and you kind of look at it as yes, Horus, kill him, destroy him, and then you feel more into that or something. It's, I guess, or it'd be subverted where all that's gone, and then that rage is just enhanced in some way, if it would still exist.
Yeah, because it could be that the Black Rage is overwritten by what I'm going to nickname the Blood Rage of Khorne. They might just overrule it. And instead of being, hey, that's Horus, kill him, it's, hey, that's everyone, kill everyone. Skulls for the Skull Throne.
It would more likely be subverted and corrupted, similar to what Chaos usually does to turn it into that. That's what I would solidify it on.
Is it possible in 40k to imprison or at the very least contain a Chaos God similar to the AOS Slanesh with Blackstone?
Well,
it's the same gods in both universes. They're linked via the warp, so yes.
It is, but what ensnares Slanesh is not just, oh, I have this magical wonder substance job done. It's by paradox and balance of several things. It wouldn't just work by Blackstone. You'd probably have to trap it, if using Blackstone, in an interlocking Dyson sphere of alternate polarization Blackstone, if we go via that logic. But then that's just a massive psychic ball of doom next to a psychic nullifier ball of doom. And also that's a physical substance rather than magic. And so I don't know if it would work the same way, because if you take anti-warp Blackstone into the warp, well, you probably can't. So how would you get to Slanesh in the first place without luring it into the materium?
Yeah.
Which you can't. And there's no sub-dimension. Get Slanesh into the webway and trap it in a Blackstone cage, maybe? I don't know.
I mean, we know gods can enter the webway because Chagoric's running around it, apparently, so...
Yeah, Chagoric's there. And obviously the Eldari gods probably lived there once upon a time. So maybe that. Blackstone cage in the webway. But the webway's already been corrupted by the warp, so no good there.
The catcher is I feel so proud to have captured Slanesh. Oh no, pride empowers him. Boom, I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, if pride, boom, I'm out was able to get Slanesh out, then Marathi would have doomed them from the start. Oh, wait, she already has. Never mind. Carry on.
Point proven.
Yep.
Do you think there's a possibility that the Cabal are part of Tzeentch's plans?
Yep. Because sort of having this idea where the Cabal are out to destroy Chaos by any means, they want Chaos to win. What if the visions they've seen of the Chaos Gods dying after Horus wins are wrong because Tzeentch twisted them?
Fair enough.
Way, if the Cabal are right about what happens if Horus loses, Tzeentch wins long term. If they're wrong about what happens if Horus wins, Tzeentch wins short term. Every time Tzeentch wins.
Fair enough. Are blanks actually soulless, or is it a genetic defect that gives them their abilities? And if being soulless is what grants them their powers, why don't Necrons have the same capabilities? Right, one thing I do want to point out is from the Sisters of Silence entry from War of the Spider, which states flat out that pariahs, blanks, whatever you want to call them, lack anything that can be called a soul. I think that's pretty much an open and shut thing there. I know there's one short story apparently that says they do have a soul, but considering there's the amount of other sources that say, no, they don't have souls...
They almost have an anti-soul.
I mean, So a lot of the, for example, the Collectus Assassin lore from like the Index Imperialis article a while back, it said that basically every living being has a psychic reflection in the warp, which is basically their soul, but pariahs lack this psychic reflection and therefore are soulless.
Okay, so that sort of sums that. And so to the point about the Necrons, then.
Funny enough, the 7th edition Necron Codex did actually mention in regards to the Destroyers that Destroyers apparently have remnants of their souls or whatever it is. I'll get the quote. Hang on one second, because funny enough, I did do an actual video on this a while ago. Well, probably about a year ago at this point. I did actually get some quotes in regards to this. So give me just 2 seconds. Because, yes, we know the Silent King said, like, he gave his people immortality at the cost of their souls, though that's probably just hyperbole and dramaticism and all that. Yeah, in regards to the 7th edition Necron Codex, for Necron Destroyers, it says, and I quote, "Destroyers are consumed by a hatred of all life. Any shreds of their souls that might have survived biotransference have been scoured away by the Great Sleep." Now, shreds of their soul seems to imply that while the Necrons may not have full souls, they have lingering remnants of them. Just like a faint echo of a soul, as it were, rather than being truly soulless.
Yeah, and then you have, obviously, pariahs who actually were blanks, but they were part Necron, part not, so they could have perfected the process.
And there's also the fact that, fun enough, interesting thing, it comes from the Hemlock Wraith Fighter. That Eldari aircraft? Because basically how the weapons of that aircraft work, it basically kills things by basically blasting their souls out of their body, in essence.
Yeah, it's almost like cutting the puppet strings.
Yep, and it also is shown to affect Necrons. And I quote from the short story Sky Hunter, "The Hemlock's weapons flared, and though there was no sign of discharge, Elaric heard a discordant wail, and the Necrons fell like puppets with cut strings. They did not repair, and their bodies did not phase out. Had they been mortal, their spirits would have been held into the warp, doomed to spend eternity as the playthings of doomed to spend eternity as the playthings of demons. What such infernal devices would do to the soul dark, Elaric could not guess." But the fact that it kills people by sending their souls directly into the warp, and it also affects Necrons.
Necrons do still have a little bit of soul. It's not much, but it's not nothing.
It's probably not an entire soul, but it's like shards of a soul. Or like,
appropriate. So the Catan shard your souls, we shard your Catan.
Just a light souling. It's a little sprinkle.
Yeah. Just like, a patina of a soul or something, yeah. That one short story that apparently says they do have souls, it was a Graham McNeil short story, which means I'd say take it with a grain of salt, considering he also did that short story where he had John Grammaticus in 20th century Kabul, even though he only became a perpetual during the Battle of Anatole Hive, which was during the Terran Unification Wars. Yeah. So it would have been near impossible for Grammaticus to be around 20th century Kabul if he only became a perpetual during the Unification Wars, and we know he became a perpetual during the Unification Wars because he says it outright in Legion, saying, "I'm only this because you made me."
Yeah, there's a general rule of when working out which version of events is the most likely to be canon, then go by which stuff came out most recently, which stuff is deemed as officially non-canon, which is almost nothing, and go by which has got the most source material to back up that particular viewpoint. It's sort of like... I'm trying to think of a good example here where we've got two very well-known clashes of people not understanding which version is canon. Khorne came first / Nurgle came first.
Yeah, because there's only one thing I found that says Nurgle came first, and that was in Amani's Calgar novel of all fucking things. But every other source that mentions which order the Chaos Gods came out has always said Khorne comes first, and the most recent of which being the Wrath and Glory RPG.
Which is, 3 years old.
Yeah. And even then, the Liber Chaotica was recently republished, and that says that Khorne was the oldest Chaos God as well, so...
Yes, you sort of go by what's new / been retconned, then go by how much material you've got, and then you look for, is any of this actually canon? And then that's sort of how we have to arrive at our thing. So when I do lore videos, you'll probably hear me say sometimes about conflicting sources, because sometimes you'll read the wikis or whatever, and one book will say this, and another book will say that, and they can direct conflict with each other. So you sort of have to try and sift through which is most likely to be canon, and if you can't sift through that, go by other conflicting sources suggest X and Y. So it's a bit difficult, and admittedly, going back to what we said right at the start about we're the people that some people use to get their lore, we have to try and acknowledge the conflicting sources and sort the canon from the random fact that came out of nowhere.
I'll always try to reconcile like the two sources, like two sources together if they don't contradict too much. Yeah. Like in regards to like the whole devastation of Baal, the novel and the codex entries are slightly different because like the codex, for example, says like a whole horde of demons burst out of the warp to fight the Nids in orbit of Baal itself, which we didn't actually see at all in the novel.
Yeah, they appeared on Baal Primus, and we never see Baal itself actually have demons on it. Though it's implied the Indomitus Crusade came in and killed all the demons later.
Yeah.
So you can sort of try and piece it together that way.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So, considering that there's so many more... So, going back to the blank soulless thing, considering there's a hell of a lot more sources that say that they're outright soulless, including, off the top of my head, the introduction for the Collectus Assassins, the Watchers of the Throne novels, the first Araman novel, the Emperor's Gift novel, all referring to them as soulless, flat out. Again, pretty much every info regarding the Sisters of Silence and the Pariah Gene itself says that they are soulless. Not the Black Books, but the more recent stuff. Again, like in War of the Spider, it says flat out they lack anything that can be called a soul.
Yeah, sort of. If you want to try and reconcile, like, well, why do certain beings not have a soul when a soul is a warp construct and this is a genetic mutation? You could almost think of it like they have an anti-soul. So instead of having this,
it's either that
they don't just ignore the warp blanks. They actively damage the warp. Like that's what the Sisters of Silence do. So it's almost like an anti-soul.
Yeah. Again, because there's a genetic defect that basically causes people to quote-unquote lack a soul, then by extension that would suggest that a soul in itself is created through an unknown biological process. You don't have to be an intelligent creature to have a reflection in the warp, because obviously to be have a reflection in the warp, if you're a psyker, for example, you have to have a reflection in the warp because psykers are linked to the warp inherently, and we know in 40k that there are actual just animals that are psychic. The fear cat, for example, it's basically a tiger that's psychic. So obviously that thing's got to have a soul of some kind, hasn't it? If it's psychic.
Yeah, we're not going to get into the philosophical, biological debate of what is a soul here, because we'll be here all week and probably get nowhere. But it does bear thinking about slightly, and I'm sure the comments will pick up on this, and I'm welcome to have a big, long 25 comments about what is a soul.
And in regards to sources, because some people prioritize, like the codices over the novels, for example, and, I think, stuff directly from GW themselves will take precedence over something like, say, from their subsidiaries. So maybe like something from so potentially, if an event from like the Horus Heresy is mentioned in a codex, but it's slightly different in the Black Book, what takes precedence there? Probably the GW thing takes precedence, though the Fortress stuff does flesh it out more.
Yeah, so sort of the ranking order I sort of put things in is GW codices and the rulebook. Forge World's Black Books, if I'm talking about the Heresy, overrule are slightly there, but I put the Black Library novels second, then Black Books, then probably supplementary material, so like the Aeronautica Imperialis rulebook and things like that. And then way, way, way down is everything that wasn't written by GW, like the lore of, say, Space Marines, like reconciling the whole second capture of the Ultramarines. Captain Titus is taken out of that equation because it's a third-party source.
And then you got difficult. Unless events from the games are referenced later by GW themselves, I really don't like referencing them much at all.
I've never even seen that. Has that ever happened? The
events of Dawn of War were referenced in the Index of Stars article for the Blood Ravens. So,
dude, and the one that people like to bring to me all the time because the video I made of Space Marine, people go, Sicarius mentioned Titus when he went through the halls of the thing and mentioned Captain Titus there. And I'm like, I know, he's there, and there was no other mention of him ever in the books ever. It was just a nod, and then it moved on.
Yeah,
So, yeah. And especially for any mechanical lore stuff, it's always been a deal where, especially when you're like getting these books like commissioned and stuff from the company to author, there's definitely times to where a company will get an author to do this, give him a bunch of guidelines, but then either after that book they kind of realize, oh no, we messed up, because everyone's human still, like people make mistakes, and the person or the brand manager or whoever is supposed to keep the continuity going, probably it slipped his mind, because it comes to, for something as big as Warhammer, for even like for all the different aspects of it, there's going to be a point where you go, oh crap, forgot the demons. So for that reference of like the demons coming in, that's more than likely what happened. And it does kind of hurt for people going like, where is the consistent lore line? Always
where is the lamb source?
Yeah, just use common sense and don't try to like Bible hit people with your copy of the Horus Heresy or something. Just be like, oh, well, it was mentioned here that they took care of demons on this planet, but it wasn't mentioned here. More than likely, they forgotten the demons were there. You know,
and I think this is what's made Dawn of Fire interesting, because they said very clearly that one of the, I hesitate to say, problems with the Horus Heresy is there was no central oversight. So when a Horus Heresy novel came out, they could very easily contradict each other, because unless you had an encyclopedic knowledge of every other novel, which by the end there was 50 odd, you would probably canon conflict with another novel, and that would cause a problem.
Yeah.
But with Dawn of Fire, Guy and Nick seem to have central oversight to make sure that we're all following the same compliant law. Like the plot will go in all millions of directions because it's the Indomitus Crusade, of course it's going to. But they will essentially have a fact checker at the end before the book comes out to make sure, in theory at least, they stay canon compliant with each other. Even if they're not consistent with the rest of the GW continuity, they'll at least be compliant with each other. That was the implication. So they've learned that lesson a bit.
Yeah, the plot line tree, Excel sheet was probably not shared as quickly as it was supposed to at some point.
Yeah,
but,
though I think
the
cardinal sin of not remembering your own canon is still Schrodinger's Primarch. I know we talked about it several times, but Dawn and Schrodinger's Primarch in the same book. That is the peak of, hang on a minute, did the author remember what they wrote 10 pages ago? Never mind 10 years ago.
It wasn't even 10 pages. It was 2.
Was this where the coffee break was? Or was this where the vacation break was?
Yeah,
which happens. It actually does happen, so...
Oh god, yeah, like, I'll look at a script, and like if I get halfway through a script and then come back to look at it later, I'll sort of have to reread the whole script, especially from halfway through a paragraph, and go, oh, that's where I'm going with this. That's the info I wanted to go and check next. I've literally forgotten what I was doing. I've done it.
Yeah, so it's mostly, I guess, the overall thing is like, don't Bible thump your Warhammer book. Just kind of take it in a case.
Not even your Lectitio Divinitatis. You still can't Bible thump that either.
Yeah, just take things with grains of salt and get the overall idea down. If you can get the overall like direction that's trying to go to, cool. But if you're someone's going into a super intricate detail because you need to have that one tiny demon at that one specific place to make this plotline make sense to you, then I can understand. But just try to get the general thing. It'll save you a lot of stress.
Indeed. No, that is not advice that Remleiz and I can take, because we'll be constantly just trying
you guys
to
are
work
doomed.
through it.
You're screwed.
Arguably so. Wow, we've broken 2 hours and I haven't even noticed.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. We're as bad as each other. It's all good. So yeah, I'm not sure if there's a particularly interesting question that grabbed your Remel. We can save a few for next time. Up to you.
Oh, we can save a few for next time.
All right. Well, in that case, we arrive at the most interesting portion of the program, the outro, because it's always an absolute clusterflip. So thank you everyone for watching episode 104 of Adeptus Podcastus, and thank you very much to ZoranTheBear for joining us once again. It's been an absolute pleasure having him on the show.
It's been likewise. It's been an absolute pleasure always doing this with you guys and stuff, and I hope to arrive hopefully at episode 200 this time and possibly show up in one.
What about 150?
Also
150.
Especially 150. Oh, okay. You're gonna do one. I'll try to arrive this time, and also I do want to do a shout out for the person who made that big sprawling art of everyone who's participated and putting me as a stuffed little bear space marine in the background, which I found adorable. Yes.
I will try
So-
and put that on screen now, and if I remind myself. So one thing that we always say we do is sometimes we announce the next guest, and this is sort of penciled in for the next episode. We'll be having a Black Library author on the show.
Ooh.
Assuming everything goes to plan, episode 105, which will be on 40k Theories, will be with Darius Hinks, author of the Blackstone Fortress novels at this point, and also the Mephiston series of novels. So if you've read any of those or any other book by Darius Hinks, and you have a particular question that you would like to ask him, please do let us know via the comments. Make it clear that it's for him. And if we can get him confirmed for 105, he will be there. Otherwise, we'll save them for when we do get him if we have to rearrange. Just thought you should know, because we always like to let you know when the Black Library people are coming on.
Indeed.
So, with that said, thank you very much for watching, everyone. This has been Tactica Imperialis.
This has been Remleiz from 40k Theories.
And this has been ZoranTheBear.
And we'll see you all again. Goodbye.